Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Wednesday, April 20th, 2022. I am Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and change. A little bit of a different approach for us this Wednesday. Usually you see Dave Biddle and the People's Champ, Matt Baxendale, in here, but we had to switch things around to go with a celebrity guest, and that is Dane Brugler, NFL draft expert for The Athletic. He has been a guest on here many times. And you guys know how we feel about him. I think he is the best in the business. If you are a draft geek like myself, the vision of Dane with his earphones on is probably not one you haven't seen yet, but we are going to be completely Ohio State focused today. Dane, cannot thank you enough for stopping by. To say you're busy right now would be a gross understatement.
No, it's good to be busy. We're a week out from the draft, just about. So I'm excited for it to be here. But yeah, still got a little bit of prep to do.
Speaking of prep, Dane puts together, as someone who has an editorial background, I get sick to my stomach just looking at the thing he puts together, because talk about moving parts and details. It's called The Beast. If you have any inkling of trying to get educated on the draft, this is the Bible. I would venture to guess that every NFL team personnel guy has one of these in his right hand right now, or at least accessible. Give us a little sense of what it is and how people can get it.
Well, yeah, no details too small. I think that the purpose of this guide is to be a resource. Don't take my rankings as gospel. It's not what it's meant to do. It's really meant to be just a resource to understand the strengths and weaknesses of these players. All the testing data. There's testing data for 1,700 players in this guide, which nobody else has that. And the background information, just all the details, I think is really important. And they're all puzzle pieces. And I think you put all those pieces together, you have a more clear picture of who these players are going to be at the next level. So, if you have any interest in the NFL draft at all, I promise you will get something out of this guide. And all you need is your Athletic subscription, and it's included. It's part of that. So hopefully people go check it out.
So you heard the number 1,700 in there. There's about 32 picks possible per round in 7 rounds. So the idea that 1,400 guys in the guide won't be drafted lets you know that Dane's attention to detail is literally second to none. As a Cowboys fan, I will watch the draft through their coverage, and I can't remember the guy's name. He was a tight end from Texas a few years ago, and it stumped everybody on the show. Jeff Swain, and you nailed it. By the way, that guy's still in the league, I think, amazingly enough. All right, so we're going to go through the 10 Buckeyes that are draft eligible. We expect 7 to be drafted. There are years where I think there's some doubt as to the order of the Buckeyes. I guess at the top, it's still a little bit to be determined, but we're just going to go through name by name, and Dane is going to wow you with his knowledge. He's going to let you know how each guy handled the draft process, his final evaluation, then kind of where he expects them to go. Obviously, Ohio State, you're talking receivers. We talked a few months ago, and I was a little bit incredulous at the beginning of the process that Garrett Wilson wasn't the clear number 1 receiver. Again, I'm slightly biased. He has worked himself through the process to that spot, I think. So give us the latest on your vibe on Garrett Wilson as we're about a week out.
Yeah, Wilson is the top receiver for a lot of teams. It's not a consensus. Some teams, Jameson Williams, former Buckeye, is the top receiver for them. Drake London is also viewed as the top receiver for some teams. But Garrett Wilson is the favorite to be that first receiver off the board. And I think it comes down to his ability to get open before and after the catch. That's why he's my number 1 receiver. He makes the playbook come alive. He really does. And what he did at the combine only solidified that, running in the 4.3s. You wish you were a little bit bigger. He's under 6 foot, 183 pounds, but he has length. He plays through contact. He's not a polished route runner like Chris Olave, but he's not a slouch in that area either. And you feel like he's going to get better and better as he continues to grow. So there's just, as long as you're okay with the size, you're going to love Garrett Wilson as being a playmaker for your team.
where do you project him if you're going to give a comparison? I always thought he's kind of a thicker, a little bit Stephon Diggs. And that one thing you love about Garrett Wilson is he doesn't really have, like you said, he doesn't really have a discernible weakness. I guess that's why he's the cleanest of the group. Do you think the Diggs comparison is fair? And where do you expect Garrett to land, and with who?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, especially because Diggs is a player that can get open, and then he can also make something happen after the catch, and that's Garrett Wilson's MO. Personally, I see a little CD Lamb, not as tall, and Wilson's probably a little bit better athlete, but in terms of the body control, the catch point skills, that's where I see the CD Lamb comparisons come in. It's very, very similar in those two areas. I think that. Looking at, I've heard as early as 3 to the Texans, they're looking at Garrett Wilson. I don't know that he's going to go that early. But I do think that the Jets, when you look at pick number 10, that is where we see him come off the board. We could see him come off the board earlier. 8 to Atlanta is possible. But 10, if not 10, 11 to Washington. One of those two spots seemed like the most likely landing spot for Garrett Wilson.
I don't know if you remember this. We talked about this last year. I thought Wilson in the national championship game against Pat Surtain, he cooked him a few times and Fields did not get him the ball. So I don't know how that in one-on-one coverage, I'm just very high on Wilson. I actually think Wilson and Olave, believe it or not, statistically maybe aren't where they could be if they were the featured guy in another program. The one time and that's because there's such a depth of talent across the board, but right. The one time any receiver has literally had to become the featured guy was the Rose Bowl. And we all know how that turned out for Jackson Smith-Njigba. So very high. And I've also been high on Garrett Wilson since day one. To me, he was there's a certain vibe you get on guys who can come in at Ohio State and day one really look like one of the guys. And there's never been a day at Ohio State where I felt like Garrett Wilson couldn't be on the field. I'm not sure you would say that about the rest of the crew. The next guy up, Chris Olave, arguably the most productive receiver in Ohio State history. His career started with 2 touchdowns against Michigan and never really slowed down. Kind of surprised people by coming back, wanted to be a first-round draft pick, and it seems like mission accomplished. I do know the Commanders love him at number 11. What's your vibe on Chris Olave? He's really interesting. It's like there's some people who probably have him number 1, but there's a lot of people I feel like have him number 4. So break it down for us.
Yeah, Olave is just not going to be for everybody in terms of what they're looking for at receiver. Because Olave, the big difference between Garrett Wilson and Olave for me is Olave just is not going to give you much after the catch. That to me, like that's a big deal. He's not going to break tackles. Now he can get open. He can win deep. He has that type of speed. He has that type of route prowess. But after the catch is not where his strengths are. So, you're not going to use him as an underneath guy, catch and run opportunities. The lack of physicality is something that will show up from time to time with him. So those two things. So you're looking at a guy that's more of a possession threat, a guy that can win vertically. And, it just every team's looking for something a little bit different in their receivers. So Olave, he could go 11 to Washington. That's possible. That's probably the earliest we could see him off the board. We could also see him, as late as the 20s. Would not be surprised at all to see him, 22 to the Packers. If he gets to the 24, Cowboys would be interested. So Olave, there's plenty to like. I mean, he is a pro-ready receiver, and that's a big deal for a lot of teams. There's maybe less projection with Olave. Like, what you're getting. He's wrapped in clear wrapping paper. So what you have with Olave. And even though he does have some areas where you wish he were a little bit better, knowing what you have in terms of his routes, in terms of his speed, in terms of what he can do at the catch point, that's certainly a strong selling point and something that I know teams will be very, very interested to bring into their wide receiver room.
Yeah, I don't think he'll get there, but if he goes in the 20s or such, to me, he's like the last piece of an offense for a team that's really ready to go that next step. He's a plug and play type. What do you make of this point? It was actually made by Jeff Kavanaugh, who does his own stuff now around Dallas and is a draft, I don't know what you'd call Jeff these days, draft guy.
Yeah.
But he made the point that he thinks receivers are almost like running backs. The plug and play aspect of Olave might be attractive because, yes, he's going to get paid first round money, but the really elite receivers now, I don't think guys want to pay them. So they're getting rid of these guys after 5 years anyway. If you get a plug and play first round guy financially, he would be a decent investment for those 5 years. Do you think the plug and play aspect for Olave and even Wilson has really kind of amped their stock?
Well, yeah, I mean, not only just those two players. I mean, we might have 6, 7, 8 receivers go first round because of that. And we've seen wide receiver is now the second most expensive position in the NFL. So it's a lot of teams are going to look at it and say, okay, well, let's get younger, let's get cheaper. And part of it's that, but part of it's just it's a really good, it's a top heavy wide receiver class this year. So that certainly helps Olave, helps Garrett Wilson. Both these guys, I mean, but regardless, these are first round talents. So both are going to go top 25. It's just a matter of where exactly they fall.
In Vegas, the real good bet would be who goes higher, Garrett Wilson or Jackson Smith and Jigba next year by number. Yeah,
I mean, it's tough because obviously you just don't know. There's so much between now and then in terms of who's going to be picking, what's he going to do this year for Ohio State. I don't know that he's going to be a top 10 guy. I don't think he's going to be viewed like that, but I think he's going to be viewed as a potential first rounder, no doubt.
He will go in the first round. That I am sure of. All right, next guy up. I actually thought when this guy got here, he would be picked higher. And that is Nicholas Petit-Frere out of the Tampa area. Was arguably he was number 1 offensive lineman in some rankings. What's your thoughts? Do you project him as a left tackle, as a right tackle? And where do you see him coming off the board?
I think somewhere in the third round is probably the landing spot for Petit-Frere. 6'5", 315. I thought he would test a little bit better at the combine. He tested okay, but this is a guy that you would think the athleticism, the movement skills, that's what you hang your hat on. And so I thought he would have done a little bit better with the testing. And it's curious, his vertical was 6 inches better at the pro day than the combine. And so it's, try to reconcile those numbers is a little difficult. But
bouncy Jim at the whack.
Yeah, 6 inches though is a lot. So maybe just let his fingernails grow out a little bit more for the pro day. But whatever it is, the higher the better. But there's still plenty of development left. He's a guy that he was 260 some pounds when he enrolled as a freshman. So he had a red shirt. And then the past 2 years, we saw him start at right tackle, then go to left tackle. And you see a guy with the frame that you want. He has the movement skills, but he does need to get stronger. I do have the core strength. There are concerns there. The anchor, there are concerns there. And then just his technique. So he's not ready for NFL reps. He's not ready to line up and go up against TJ Watt. But if you bring him into your program, develop him probably for most of his rookie year, maybe he's competing for a starting job later this season, going into year 2. So I think you have a guy with starting upside, a lot of things that project well, and that's why he's a good chance to land somewhere in the top 100.
Right or left, you think?
The fact that he's played both, I think, gives you that, it's a feather in his cap that he could play either spot. You bring him in, and depending on what your team needs, I don't think that you're, going to pigeonhole him on only one spot. I think he gives you that position flex.
Okay, so I've done my research on this with Dane, and he and I are going to be in extreme agreement of the next prospect, and that is Jeremy Rucker, tight end, who there's a running joke we have at Ohio State that started back with Jake Stoneburner, which was 30 receptions. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but if you get 30 receptions at Ohio State, you're ready for the Hall of Fame. He did not get it. But Rucker, when he came in, he was the highest rated tight end they'd ever gotten a commitment from. He had a day at the Elite 11 back in the day where he was the number 1 offensive player on the field. Now, like we said, he wasn't featured offensively, but he is kind of it seems like we're going away from the do-it-all tight end. We're going to receivers and kind of then your 6 offensive linemen. And he's got a chance to do a little of both, and I know you're real high on him.
Yeah, I am. And this is a tight end class where we're not going to have a first-round pick. We might not have a top 50 pick, But round 3, round 4, that's where we're going to see a lot of tight ends come off the board. And I think Jeremy Rucker is one of the best. He's going to be a better pro than what we saw in college. And it's not that people look at the production, 54 career catches, and kind of, roll their eyes and, they're not interested. But I mean, it's just the way that offense is. And, the targets that the receivers get, the run game. But Jeremy Rucker played a lot of snaps. So he was used as a blocker. He ran routes. And when he was targeted, good things happened. So with Jeremy Rucker, I'm a fan. I think that soft hands, the way he can work the middle of the field, he's got seam speed. There's a lot of things that say Jeremy Rucker is going to be a productive pro. So I think he's a day 2 pick. I think a team somewhere probably in the 3rd round. The foot injuries hurt him a little bit. He injured his foot at the Senior Bowl, so he missed the final day there. That he couldn't work out the combine, couldn't work out the pro day. So I think that's hurt him a little bit, just in terms of not being able to show his athleticism. But I think this is still a guy that's locked into day 2, and the team's going to get a pretty good player.
Yeah, tight end guys don't get picked very high. They just don't, unless they're a freak. And 3rd round, you can get yourself a plug-and-play guy. I mean, I really think Rucker is probably a plug-and-play guy. I mean, it depends on, obviously, the team he goes to, but I'm just, I always see everything through a Cowboys tainted lens, and he could absolutely come in and take reps away from Dalton Schultz today or tomorrow. All right, next up, offensive lineman Thayer Munford, position flex.
Yeah, a guy that plays plenty of tackle, obviously. I do think his best spot will be guard. I'm not as high on Munford as maybe some others. I've got him as more of a day 3 player, 4th, 5th round. We'll see where he ends up. 6'6", 330. You love the length, over 35-inch arms. There's the experience factor. He's played in 54 games over his career. Senior captain. He had the Block O jersey, so a lot of things in his favor. But he's a guy that can be a little inconsistent. Especially with his footwork. There's some stiffness to his pass sets. So I for a guy that has that many games played under his belt, I expected someone to be just a little bit more, a little quicker in terms of recognizing things, in terms of what the defense is doing and how he needs to react. So I think that the inconsistencies, that's going to be an issue for him, and it might stop him from being a starter anytime soon. But you've got a guy with size, with length, played a lot of football. He has balance to him. So I think that he can come in, be a depth piece, and then eventually work his way into competing for a starting job.
To me, he just screams swing lineman. The pedigree, I mean, he played great high school football. And then to play at Ohio State as much as he did, and he's definitely a tough, strong dude. So, and, you play in front of the shoe with those expectations, it does feel like he's just a perfect swing guy. Next up, Haskell Garrett. Interesting prospect. He does the one thing that makes defensive linemen get picked really high, which is get to the quarterback. But I'm not sure he's as good against the run as the guys who get picked up there. Your thoughts on Haskell?
Another guy that I'm just not as high on, and really it's because I expected him to get to the quarterback more. He had, I think 5.5 sacks, which is a solid number. You see upfield quickness, but if he doesn't win with that first step, with that initial burst off the ball, he really has a tough time countering blocks, stacking and shedding. And then there are questions against the run as well. So I like Haskell Garrett. I think that somewhere on day 3, he's going to be drafted to be probably a backup 3 technique in the league. But I'm just not sure he's ever going to have the consistency as an upfield penetrator that teams are looking for as their starting 3 technique. But I do think as part of a rotation, as part of, can round out a depth chart, he can stay in the NFL for a long time. But I expected a little more juice after I got done watching his tape.
Yeah, I probably should have said this as a point of reference. The draft is 3 days. Day 1, Thursday, is the first round. Day 2, correct me if I'm wrong, is rounds 2 and 3, and right. Day 3 is rounds 4 through 7. So when they say day 3, it just means 4 through 7. Day 2 is a good pick now. 2, second, third round. That used to be kind of a You see, a day two guy, it wasn't as much of a compliment as it is now. All right, here is a guy, defensive end, who I could put together a highlight film of this guy and probably get people thinking he's a second or third round draft pick. Unfortunately, the rest of the plays and his total package would probably not do that. And so I don't think he's going to be a second or third round draft pick, and that's defensive end Tyreek Smith.
And it's also worth noting that the edge rusher class this year is the deepest we've seen in a long, long time. We're going to see pass rushers come off the board very quickly in the first round, but then it's not going to slow down second round, third round, fourth round. And so that'll hurt a guy like Tyreek Smith a little bit, who is my 24th ranked edge rusher. And I mean, if you would have asked me where he would have ranked, I would have said, probably, 14, 15. But when you stack all these guys, it's just, there's just such a volume of talented edge rushers in this class. Smith, you feel like there's still, there's still a good chance he's yet to play his best football. 6'3.5", 254 pounds, has length to him. You like the way he can get upfield with that arc speed. He can bend, he can dip. He can cross the face of blockers. He uses that length to set an edge against the run game. So, I mean, there's plenty to like, but, 8 sacks in his career. You expected a little more than that. Only 3 last season as a full-time starter. It just didn't make enough big plays, especially in the backfield, that you want to see from a guy like that. So he needs to get better with his pass rush sequence, having a consistent plan, patching those moves together. So again, once he gets more coaching in the NFL and starts to hopefully put things together, he has a chance to ascend and be a better player than we saw at Ohio State.
He's one of those guys that if he can stay healthy and if he goes to the right spot, I think he's got a much better chance. But he's also one of those guys that you could see just kind of never really finding his fit. Okay, there's 3 guys who are also draft eligible that aren't predicted to get drafted by some people, and that is Master Teague, Antoine Jackson, and Demario McCall.
Master Teague, I just watching him, I was not a huge fan of his running style. There wasn't enough make you miss that. For a bigger guy, he runs with a little bit of power, but not enough that I think, is going to see him get drafted. But after his pro day, you just never know because, teams are looking for guys that are reliable, guys that can play special teams. And a guy like Master Teague, who has plenty of experience and tested the way he did, he might be a fit. You look at the pro day numbers, 5'11", 220 pounds, ran a 4.44, a 36-inch vert, 6.95 3-cone. I mean, these are outstanding numbers. Size, speed. That's what some NFL teams are looking for on special teams. And so Master Teague could be a sneaky late draft pick. If not, then he's going to be a PFA, no doubt, a guy that's going to come in and compete for a roster spot, try to round out that running back room, but then also, fight for a job on special teams. That'll be his ticket to sticking in the NFL. Demario McCall, I don't know that he ever really lived up to what a lot of people thought he might be at Ohio State, just, be that, whether it's that running back or receiver, just be that athletic playmaker. His pro day wasn't as impressive. He ran in the 4.5s. For a guy that size, not great. McCall's going to get into a camp, no doubt. And then who's the third that you mentioned?
Antoine Jackson.
Antoine Jackson, yeah. Who, another guy that had a lot of hype, I thought. As a recruit, but it just never really materialized for him. He saw action and he just was never really able to make that big of an impact. And so he'll be an undrafted guy, but another guy with size, another guy with some potential. And so that'll get him into a camp and give him a chance.
Okay, 2 other guys I want to talk about, and then maybe we'll take a few questions from the users. But I think there's 2 other interesting storylines that you could relate to Ohio State. One is Jameson Williams, who has been super interesting to Ohio State fans, I think, just because, and this is more a question for you than me, but I cannot remember a guy transferring and being that good that quickly, when he really didn't show much of that at Ohio State, and it was immediate. I mean, he was their main guy immediately. And then he was ranked ahead of, by some people, he's going to be ranked ahead of, Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. And he was going to be the 4th string guy. I know people can't get their minds around that. That's a fact. one thing I will say about Jameson Williams, if you already like him, go back and watch his high school tape. He is the fiercest hitter from the secondary. I mean, he is not a soft guy. I almost thought they should have played him at safety. That's not a lie. When he was going to be the 4th-string guy, I'm like, maybe we should move him to safety. That's how good he was. I mean, he is a tough guy. I wonder if someone would have been able to sit in a room with Ryan Day and Brian Hartline and have the same discussion and tell them the guy they had 4th-string was the best one. Don't you think that's kind of have you ever seen anything kind of develop in this fashion? And what do you think of Jameson?
No, it's a really unique situation where, I mean, we're talking about really talented guys here. It's in a lot of ways we're just kind of parsing these guys based
off
the
LeBron Jordan argument.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that you have a really talented room, and it's not as clear cut as anybody wants to make it. With Jameson Williams, he's always had the speed, and in that Alabama offense, he was really able to show it. He had Alabama's 11 longest plays last year. He was responsible for 10 of them. I mean, this guy has just ridiculous speed, and that's speed. And it's not just speed. He's not just a track guy out there. You see it in his routes, catches the ball well. He's got length, a really competitive guy, like you said. But a lot of teams are going to bet on that speed because that's what NFL teams are focused on. And that could be the difference maker. So, for Ohio State, their job isn't to play the most NFL, the guys with the best NFL potential. Like that's not what they're thinking about. They're thinking about who's going to help us win football games. And, what are you going to do? Sit Chris Olave? Of course not. I mean, but the guys that were playing in front of Jameson Williams, were doing so because they were producing. And it's just one of those situations where it's an embarrassment of riches. And we've seen it other places where a guy's maybe blocked a little bit. I mean, Jermaine Johnson this past year, he was at Georgia last year, and the part of a rotation, and he was good when on the field, but he just couldn't get enough reps. He goes to Florida State. He's the ACC Player of the Year. It led the league in sacks and tackles for loss. He's going to be a top 15 pick now. So it's a very similar situation there. So it's just a case of a crowded room, not enough reps, and a guy moving on, and no ill will, no wasn't with any animosity, anything like that. It's just a chance to get more reps, and it worked out. So I don't think that I don't think Ohio State fans are bitter about it by any means, because it's not like Ohio State was deficient at wide receiver this year in any way. So it's good to see Jameson Williams go have success, and it'll be interesting to see watch their careers moving forward.
As I was sitting here, I remembered a certain quarterback transfer that had success after he left Ohio State.
Yeah, it wasn't immediate. It took a little bit. That first
That's revisionist history, by the way.
Yeah. What's that?
And Dwayne, his unfortunate passing has been terrible, but we had some technical difficulties when we first started doing the live show. So I keep a list of topics at my ready here in case I got to go solo. And one of the things revisionist history wise is people thinking they should have just definitely picked Joe Burrow over Dwayne Haskins. Go look at their stats the year after. I think 1 through 50 touchdown passes, and I think Burrow threw 16. Yeah. So listen, I'm the biggest Joe Burrow fan there is, but the idea that was a faulty decision is revisionist history. Okay, last guy I want you to discuss, and maybe we'll take 1 or 2 questions here if we can keep it under 30 minutes, which we won't be able to, unfortunately. No questions. At Ohio State's Pro Day, Garrett Wilson was running routes. CJ Stroud was running routes. They were looking very good. However, the most calls we got from sources was about the individual throwing them the football, and that is CJ Stroud. When you hear talk of the draft, half the league is talking about how they're going to get Bryce Young and CJ Stroud next year if they go back in the draft. Unfortunately, 13 teams can't split 2 guys. Your thoughts on Stroud? Where you project them, and then your early vibe on Stroud versus Bryce Young, which is going to be the most talked about player comparison. It's really very similar to Fields and Lawrence, Californians or Georgians, kind of compared to each other, competing teams. You have the floor.
Yeah, no, CJ Stroud to me is going to be the top quarterback going into next year, a top quarterback prospect. He has that type of, what he did last year. He has that type of pedigree, the anticipation that he plays with. The offense, does it help him? Sure. I mean, throwing to those receivers and having an offensive mind like Ryan Day and just all the support system, the running game, all of that helps CJ Stroud, no doubt. And obviously it helps Bryce Young with what he has going on in Alabama. But I think CJ Stroud, the throws that he can make, the comfort level that he feels in the pocket, the way that he doesn't really seem to get rattled all that much, especially for a redshirt freshman. He going into next year, he is the top quarterback prospect in the nation. So it's going to be really fun to see his maturation after a full year under his belt, to see what he looks like. I can't wait to watch that Ohio State offense in the fall.
No question. 30 minutes and 20 seconds, and I had Dane for 30 minutes. So this extra 20 seconds, Dane's like a lawyer. This is going to cost our site big. But Dane is the best in the business. You saw that, people. He did not skip a beat. And there was about 1,650 other prospects I could have asked him about, and he would have nailed those as well. He works for The Athletic. Like we said, if you have any draft interest, you need to get the beast. It is a great thing to have actually during the season as well as a point of reference. Dane, we appreciate you stopping by, man. Thanks again.
Anytime, as always. Glad to do it.